I think it's important to make the distinction between an intimacy disorder and a sexual disorder. I don't think that there is actually a sexual addictive disorder. That all sort of boils down psychologically to intimacy and the struggle to be able to create and maintain intimacy with people in your lives. It's a relationship disorder. And I guess part of what I mean by that is that most people that struggle with intimacy is that they struggle with the capacity to be able to acknowledge what's going on inside of them and to be able to share that. Intimacy in Latin means intimus, and the definition of intimus is innermost. So they don't have the capacity of being reflective enough to know what is going on inside of them to be able to share it in a way in which someone else can connect with that, relate to that, and then respond to that. Also has components of empathy, the capacity to be able to give comfort, to give sort of protection and an attunement to someone else. And so what typically ends up happening, why people end up in this position of struggling with intimacy, is most of the time have had childhood experiences where there's been like neglect, or there's been abuse, or parents discourage children from being able to feel things. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Don't cry. Real men don't cry. You won't be respected for that. You'll never survive in this world if you don't. So these are all these messages that kids hear, and so they really learn. They learn early on to shut that down, and they don't learn how to take their pain, their sadness, their joy to someone else and share it with them, experience with them, so that that person can in return offer a response that's a natural antidote to the ways that they feel, that's validating to that, and that can create connections. And so they go into adulthood really not knowing how to relate to people on that level. They tend to isolate more, they tend to withdraw, they tend to become more uncomfortable when people push intimacy, they become more anxious, and so the way to lower their anxiety is to isolate themselves and to pull away. And so they really position themselves to need something that's non-relational to be able to feed this inability to be able to connect or to be able to manage their moods. And so they use sexual addictions as a way to do that. And the sexual addict almost uses the image as sort of this artificial sense of intimacy. It's like there's this sense that I am connected with this person. They're longing for me. They want me, but it's really still very artificial. And so I think there's a sense in the moment that this is actually happening, and this is something that doesn't die just because I isolate myself. The need to connect with people just doesn't go away, and so sometimes they'll use that piece of the addiction to feel like they are actually somehow connected artificially to something, but that's short-lived, and they have to go to the next image, to go to the next. And a lot of addicts will talk about it's not so much the parts that they're addicted to, it's the facial expressions. It's that look of desire that sits on the image that they're staring at that says, I need you, I want you. And these are not experiences that they've had in their life from an adult, from a partner, to communicate that desire for them, even as a little child, to affirm who they are and to say you're important, you're lovable, and you're of value. And I know a lot of people that would hear those words and tears would come to their eyes because it really resonates with them. This was their life experience to go through this, and now they find themselves in this addiction world. And one of the best ways to get out is to connect and learn how to do intimacy, but they feel so paralyzed. They don't know how to do intimacy because it was never modeled for them. They never had those experiences, but yet they long for it. This huge tension between wanting something that's written as part of our code of conduct within our DNA to connect with other people, but then being stuck in addiction that isolates you more and more and more, and you go deeper and deeper in shame. And it's hard. It's hard to say, okay, well, the thing that's going to get me out is to really try and create authentic connections with people. But I don't know how to do that. I don't have the toolbox. I don't know. I don't have the basic tools to be able to know how to do that. And even when I try to do it, I get so anxious and so uncomfortable that I end up isolating myself again. And so I think that's part of why it really is an intimacy disorder. Well, I think someone that struggles with intimacy has to be able to commit themselves to taking risks. When they approach other people, when they try to engage in relationships, when they get that uncomfortable feeling of wanting to remove themselves or withdraw, that they work beyond the impasse of that feeling, that they stay engaged, that they talk about their uncomfortableness, that they open themselves up with their brokenness. They can even say things such as, I don't really know how to do this. I didn't grow up knowing how to do this, and I'm really feeling pretty inadequate to know how to relate. I need your help. to help me know how to relate. That in of itself creates intimacy, because it's really showing that broken, vulnerable part of who you are. I think it's a process, you know. I mean, whatever they've been doing internally, interpersonally around intimacy is something that's become a reflex in their life, and they've done it a gazillion times. And so to create a new reflex of reaching, to feel comfortable with that, is not something you do overnight. You know, it's a process that you learn how to do and engage in. And it's very life-giving when you do it well, but you feel awkward and inadequate, and it's almost like, you know, you feel like you're stumbling around, and it's uncharted territory, and other people are good at it, and I'm bad at it. And so sometimes it takes someone else helping facilitate that process, like a therapist, to facilitate that process, to learn how to be intimate, how to be close. You know, and there's some books that you can read on intimacy. There's other things that you can do that are helpful, you know, to moving yourself along that process. But there's nothing that beats just diving into relationships and allowing yourself to try and engage in them in authentic, congruent ways, that kind of forces you to do that. Particularly engaging yourself with healthy people, because there's a lot of unhealthy people that will, you know, do superficial conversations with you. But there's healthy people that will, you know, will relate to you in a way that's intimate, that will help teach you how to do that in return.